I'm going to walk through what I call the 4 pillars or the 4 stages that are necessary for optimum results in autism recovery, because you want to alleviate and even possibly eliminate those symptoms. And if you've listened to naysayers in the past or people who have tried to tell you these things aren't possible, stay tuned, stay with me. Because again, I was told it wasn't possible and it worked for my son. And then I began sharing it with now thousands of parents worldwide over and over, and parents are having huge results. So I will also be giving you a link later where you'll be able to hear from some of those parents as well and the experiences they've had for their children, including the mom whose child is 39. Okay, the next slide. So these are the 4 stages that we're going to be going through today. They are very, very important, and we're going to go into some more of the specifics with each one. And we're going to start with the first one, which is healing the gut. So first of all, you want to know, why is healing the gut so important? The gut controls the brain. When it's inflamed, the brain is inflamed. You might already notice that your child has maybe some digestive issues. You may notice more on the symptom side where it's irritability or anger or inability to focus, or they can't sleep at night. This actually is stemming from these underlying pathogens, co-infections, and toxins that are in their system that are inflaming their gut and inflaming their brain. And it's where the brain is affected is how we see the symptoms. So you've got to clear the gut and be able to heal it up. And the first thing we're going to do really is start working with diet. So a lot of parents are concerned with, how do I change my child's diet? Because, picky eating is very, very common. And I'll give you a resource as well. There'll be something to follow for you to help you transition into the better diet. There are also supplements that help to heal the lining of the gut. But how does it get injured in the first place? So a lot of toxins, pathogens, and infections can be passed in utero from us when we are pregnant with them. It goes into the baby. They can actually be born with susceptibilities. You may have heard things like candida overgrowth, which is the yeast overgrowth, when that can cause a lot of toxins and inflammation in the gut. There are foods and allergies and things like that, other toxins and pathogens that will disrupt the gut. And we'll talk about those today. So you'll know what some of those are to make sure that you eliminate them. The gut also controls 80% of the immune system. So if your child's sick a lot, it's also the first reason why. There are serotonin and dopamine neurotransmitters or brain messengers that are made in the gut. And if the brain doesn't get enough of those, then serotonin and dopamine affect things like mood, stability, sleep, appetite, ability to focus. So these are all important to know that a lot of this starts with the gut. And we have to lay a foundation first, because if we just start throwing in detoxification and we just start, working on co-infections and things before we support those detoxification pathways, your child's going to get worse, way worse before they get better. You might be wondering, well, this is supposed to help my child and they're getting worse. I also want to tell you that your child is not an angry child. Their body is so toxic and inflamed that it's creating these behaviors. So you can start by removing these bad foods that you just saw, these things like gluten and dairy and sugars and processed carbohydrates. What they're doing is continuing to keep the gut inflamed, and those bad bacteria, candida, crave sugar. Processed carbohydrates also turn to sugar in the body. Dairy is filled with sugar, and dairy and gluten also create opiates in the body, like the opiate drug. So you might be saying, Karen, how do I transition my child's diet? This is all they'll eat, because they're literally, now you know why, some of the reasons why they're literally addicted to these foods. So we want to move on from these foods and start implementing things more, it'll be a transition of slowly reducing these foods over time. Everything's done very slowly. And then as you do that, you might notice that behaviors are going to get a little worse, because if the candida isn't getting the food it needs to thrive, it starts to die. There's a term called die off. And when they start to die off, then they will increase the amount of toxins in the body. So that's when we can add in some binders and support, because you'll see otherwise these increased behaviors and fatigue and even regression. Speech gets worse. Then you think, this is supposed to help. Again, why is my child not getting better? But no, it's because you've got to work with this increase in toxins. And one of the ways to do that is with binders. One binder that you can purchase at a health food store, or we'll give you a link for in resources as well, is to activated charcoal. And that can be purchased at a health food store, or you can purchase it online. But what you want to know is that if most things I will tell you about today will come in either powder or liquid form. Occasionally there's something, again, I have weeded out we'll get on beyond binders. I've weeded out 95% of the bad products out there that don't work, have fillers and binders and bad ingredients. And we take the best of the best products for our children's very specific, unique needs and their sensitivities. You know, we have to be very careful with how we move forward with a child with autism. It's done methodically, very slowly, in sequential order and steps, because we want to support those detoxification pathways. So as you start adding in things like more organic poultry, line caught fish, never farmed, a little bit of cruciferous vegetables, partially steamed, because digesting fiber can be hard in the beginning, coconut oil, olive oil, the good fats to help the brain, and getting some of this nutrition in. We also want to make sure you're also avoiding the bad foods, again, these processed carbohydrates and bad oils, because bad oils, canola oil, safflower oil, those types of things, they're going to actually deplete the body of the good that it needs. The brain is 60% fat, so it requires fat, but it's important that you're getting, again, the good oils, like I mentioned, coconut oil, olive oil, but not the bad ones. So there, yes, of course, there's more to know. It's done, you know, in step-by-step process. And activated charcoal is something that can be really helpful as a binder that you can just use from 1 to 3 days, for maybe 1 to 3 days, as those behaviors increase. When you're starting to see a little die-off, it'll help to calm the behaviors. You can open that capsule up if your child won't take a pill. Totally fine to do that. Mix it in with water, mix it in with a little bit of a smoothie. They're definitely best taken away from food, but if you can only get it in, mixing it in with a little food, you can do that. So there are ways to be creative. And sometimes it's just, how can I get this in? And you do your best with how it works for you to have your child be willing to take it. So yeah, again, mixing in it a little bit, but just for a couple of days. And it is best taken away from food for best absorption as well. But again, if you can only get it in them, if you mix it in with a little food, it's going to be better than not doing it at all. If you're noticing for a couple of days you need some help with a binder like that, because these behaviors are getting worse. What you might notice from the diet, now I noticed for my son right away, he got so much calmer. He could focus better. He started interacting with his sister that he had, like he hadn't before. And other parents that I share these things with share very similar stories. Better speech, eye contact, improvement in, just calming down, calmer behaviors, better sleep. It's important to understand that you'll see changes with the diet, because as the inflammation starts to reduce in the gut, the inflammation on the brain is actually starting to reduce. But as we move forward into other things, you'll see there are other toxins and co-infections that will also harm the gut. One of them, glyphosate, the weed killer Roundup. Well, that is sprayed on our crops, especially in the United States. And when we eat that food, or we eat, say, you're eating from an animal that's not organic and they've eaten the grains, you're then eating it in their meat when you eat it. So you're actually still getting it that way. Pathogens, again, we talked about candida. We're going to talk about parasites. Other environmental toxins like mercury really disrupt the gut. Co-infections, mold and Lyme really disrupt the gut. We're going to talk about those today too.